Well, we're really happy to have Strongbox Systems here with us today. They make some of the fastest workstations in the world, if not the fastest PC workstations. And we've got Brian here. Thanks for coming, Brian.
Please be here.
It's an incredible looking piece. Inside here we've got liquid cooling, we've got fans, massive heat sinks, all the things that you'd expect to see in a really top-end workstation. What is it that actually distinguishes this from a typical more generic type of workstation that people might want to buy to do video editing or 3D rendering?
It's a combination of the components, basically. We use the highest end components. Our motherboards use 12K capacitors, and they're tested in ambient temperatures of 112 degrees centigrade to run for 7 days without breaking. Our CPUs are Extreme Edition CPUs, all verified and guaranteed by Intel.
But all of these things, presumably, other manufacturers could use those same parts. So how is it that this machine is even faster? Not just a bit faster, but like way faster from what you've been telling me.
So we use a custom BIOS, and what that enables us to do is to run the CPU at high gigahertz without adding any extra voltage, and the CPU doesn't throttle back like the majority of other manufacturers.
So how is it that the CPU doesn't just burn up or go wrong?
That comes down to the cooling that we use. So we use either closed loop custom water cooling, or we use an open loop like this one here.
So it's a combination of your specially written BIOS and the cooling. When we say it's the fastest workstation you can buy, you seem very confident about that. What is it, what benchmarks have you run and what experience have you had that makes you confident to say this is the fastest PC workstation you can buy?
We ran all the usual benchmarks for applications like Maya, so SpexApp, Benchwell for Maxwell render, Octane render as well. And also we let these machines go out in the field to be tested by professional production companies. Basically it's the feedback that comes back from them which gives us the confidence to know that we are the fastest. And the reason why is because they tested against their best of the best.
Yeah, so this is not some esoteric, highly contrived benchmark you're talking about. This is real world
testing, yeah.
Yeah, which of course is the best.
Yeah.
Type. So can you give me an example of how much faster this might be than again, a generic workstation?
So in a real flow fluid simulation test, we cut a render frame down from 2.5 hours down to 5 minutes. In another fluid simulation test, we cut the render time down from 45 hours down to 15 hours.
But what kind of system were we comparing this with, the ones that were so much slower?
HPZs, A40s, dual Xeons, normally 24 cores, and our 8-core systems are absolutely destroying them.
Staying in the real world so that we can see what kind of perspective this fits into. Mm-hmm. What would be the benefits, say, to a video editor? Would it be that they can edit in a higher resolution, let's say 8K as opposed to 4K, or 4K with more streams as opposed to HD?
So with video editing, you've got a smooth UI. Scrubbing through the timeline is seamless, there's no jerkiness, which definitely adds to creativity and doesn't stop that flow. You can have multiple streams because we use NVMe storage drives as
just explain
cache.
NVMe?
So NVMe is basically the next generation of SSD, and the Super SSD, which basically was a bit of a failure. We also use M.2 cards, which are extremely small. They were designed originally for laptops to replace SSDs to be low power. But basically we use them as a cache drive, and we can get 2200 megabytes a second out of them.
That's 2.2 gigabytes?
That's 2.2 gigabytes, yeah. And our NVMe drives are 3 gigabytes, but we can RAID 0 them. together. So you can have 9 gigabytes.
So these
For
are
example.
enormous numbers, but what does it mean
Huge.
in practice?
It means that the computer is not sitting and waiting for the data to be loaded into RAM. So you can use it instantly. Also with rendering as well, the CPU doesn't have to stop its cycles and wait for more data to come across.
Yeah, it can process at the rate it wants to.
Yeah, yeah.
I think a lot of people don't realise that a lot of processors sit there idle because they're just waiting for the rest of the system to catch up.
Yeah.
And this is one of the reasons that hyper-threading is so effective, because it can make use, hopefully, of these redundant cycles.
What we find is that multiple cores doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have a faster system.
Okay, yeah.
So because a lot of video editing is still stuck in the old days of single-threaded applications, they still have, for some reason, developers just haven't made that jump. It's probably because of the intricacies of the extra programming and stuff like that.
It's a different way of thinking, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. So if you have a 24-core best of the best Xeon, and you have a quad-core CPU with a higher gigahertz, the higher gigahertz will always win. So you can go out and buy a chip for 100 quid, and basically that will trounce all over that 2,600 pounds worth of Xeon chips all day long. And it's just because it purely needs high gigahertz.
So you've taken a very pragmatic approach to this, which is, what are the components that actually perform best with these real tasks?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
All our systems are basically designed for application purposes. So, like for example, DaVinci Resolve, which is a huge grading program. But you can go out and buy a DaVinci machine, and they will say that you need 128 gig of RAM and multiple Xeon CPUs and stuff like that. But in actual testing, you don't. And there's a little secret, which is DaVinci doesn't actually use more than 16 gig of RAM. It's purely based on GPU power. Of course, when it comes to rendering, you need a decent CPU. But most people will just hit render and just go off for the night or whatever. So a smooth UI, multiple GPUs, 40 lanes of PCIe lanes, driving 4 GPUs at times 16 rate. That's where you want the power. And the thing is, the Xeons just won't do that. They won't allow the GPUs to have that breathing space.
Professional software can be very picky about the hardware it runs on. I mean, Resolve needs to find the right graphics card. Lots of other applications need to just be comfortable with what they're running on. And so when you mention things like a kind of custom BIOS and a different than mainstream approach to this, how compatible is this with the main professional packages that people like to use?
So we make sure that's 100% compatible. And the way we do it is we bring it out into the field and we let people test it for a month, basically in a professional environment, and we work directly with them. We haven't had any problems so far in over a year. So, yeah. Okay,
well, I'm very impressed. These things are real. We've looked at them. They seem to work brilliantly. How do people get in touch with you if they want to buy one?
So just contact us through the website, strongboxtechnology.com. Or alternatively, you can ring our phone number, 0845 888 8555.
Or some combination of those numbers, yeah. Brian, thanks very much indeed.
Thanks, Dave.